background. She was an analyst with Booz Allen, and she's a lawyer by education, and she was in marketing, and she spent years at the Coppola family wineries as their general counsel. And gosh, the stories she must have for us, boy. And then she started, she had this little bug in her head about starting this app to help people with their career. And it's really interesting, and I'll let her tell the story, but Giselle is on a mission to really help people manage their careers. And there's going to be an app for that. Thank goodness. And so Giselle, I'm going to turn it over to you. And as she's talking, put your questions in the chat, and we'll save some time at the end to ask Giselle. And so Giselle, take it away.
Thank you so much, Christy. It looks like I'm going to stop someone else's sound when I share.
That's okay.
Okay. Let's see. Hang on here. There we go. I think you're seeing my screen. Well, thank you so much, Christy and team. Christy is amazing. I was introduced to her through someone who participated in the boot camp, who is advising me. And my story is one that I love that Christy painted me as a Renaissance woman, because that is very positive. I would say that I was frustrated and irritated that it was so hard to help people. And I was at the Coppola companies for a long time. I was an accountant, hidden fact, in the very beginning, got my CPA, went to University of Illinois. And I've always been that type of person, like many of you in the jobs you have, where I'm a problem solver and a fixer. And as a lawyer, people come to you all the time asking for help to negotiate. And what I realized over time, getting to the punchline, is that it's often about the story. And I'm guessing you have had people at the boot camps talk about talking yourself up and your pitch and your story. And my story of the track your career is similar to that, but it's focused on action. And I'm going to tell you why. So when I got started about 10 years ago, thinking about these problems, there was one person who revolutionized things for me. And it's funny, I'm the groupie of an 80-year-old man. His name is Professor Jeffrey Pfeffer. He's at Stanford. And I was in a talk just like this talk today. And he started talking about something I had never thought about before. And he told a story that I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to make it much shorter. And his story was of a student who claimed to owe him $1 million. And he didn't know who the student hadn't told him this, but through the network, he found out that the student had attended his class on power. And in this class, Professor Pfeffer had told people, you all think that opportunities come from your deep network, the people who know your work so well, but you're wrong. Your opportunities come from your shallow network, this very thin, shallow network. And he didn't use these words exactly, but I'm going to distill them. They're the people to whom you tell your experience and your aspirations. And your aspirations are what you need to know or where you want to go. That's it. That's the essence of what he said. So you might think, like, Giselle, why does that rock your world? Well, as a lawyer, what I found over and over was that people didn't have those little facts to tell their stories at their fingertips. And they also didn't know how to execute. They would go to a talk like the one I'd been to with Professor Pfeffer. Oh, I forgot the punchline of the story. So this person who owed Professor Pfeffer $1 million, why did he owe him $1 million? He had been working at Netscape, and Professor Pfeffer painted him as someone junior. In fact, he was pretty senior. He had about 15 years of experience, and he told everyone he met, and he claims to have spoken to hundreds of people, that he wanted the next big marketing job at the next hot internet company. And when Google was hiring early on, there were a lot of names on the list, but his name came up 20 times. And that was the punchline to Pfeffer's story. The idea that you talk to so many people that the opportunities come your way. And as I was leading Coppola 5 years ago now, I thought that I would go work as a GC for a family office on a consulting basis. Wasn't really sure what I was going to do, but I decided that I wanted to try to fix a problem. And that problem was how hard it is, right? The very reason you're showing up today, whether you are in search or you finished a search, you're showing up because you want something and you are motivated to do it, but it's hard. You're getting support from the boot camp and people around you, and I felt like it should be easier. And that people could take smaller steps based on the organizational behavior research out there. And we didn't all have to be like this Google person who knew 100 people to tout himself, because that's unreasonable. So I decided very naively, I mean, those of you in IT might guess it was pretty naive, that I could build an app. So, but that's what I've been doing. We've actually been building it this last year. I spent years describing it and trying to write out what it would do. And the idea is that just like in this meeting and the boot camp, there's a lot of place in the upper left-hand quadrant for one-on-one coaching and help from people. But wouldn't it be great if we could have regular help that was low cost and high touch? Just like MyFitnessPal, Noom, if you're familiar with that into a lingo. So why is this important to you? You may not use apps in your regular life. In fact, as Christy and I discussed, the first target market for CheaSeed is the early career professional. All professionals need help. But we do have some usability testers using the app now in the App Store, and the content voice is for someone younger, and the examples are for someone younger. But what they're finding is the nudges to tracking their career, to this idea of career fitness that I'm talking about, that it is pushing them. It's pushing them to tell their stories a little bit more because they're collecting the information. So it's not that I want to sell you on using CheaSeed, but I want to sell you on the idea of tracking your career somewhere, of following a step-by-step approach. It doesn't have to be in the app. And then using what you do to tell your stories more. That's my number one goal for today for you, is for you to tell your stories more. Okay, and in the app, we try to make it step-by-step. We have programs. When we started working on the content, our market research told us that people wanted to know how to negotiate their job offer, and we developed scripts and a step-by-step guide for that. But as we've been testing, people have told us things that may be more relevant to you, like, I want help my first 100 days on the job. I'm not a CEO, but I want a plan. And so we're developing those programs that will be step-by-step to take someone really week to week throughout that process with the reminders of the smart things to do, whether it's networking or developing certain documents to help you through the process, but step by step. And the idea of the app, for app users, you already know, it has to be quick. It's little tiny micro engagements that help you make these efforts. The learning is interactive, it's very fast, it's tapped through. The tracking, it's not like putting a KPI in a system. It's easy, you get to decide how deep you go. And then we give you dashboards for reflection. We try to keep it really easy. And our goal is that we want to be there 24/7, quick and easy with these interactive programs, tracking and support. So that's CheaSeed, okay? That's where I'm coming from. I had this big idea from Jeffrey Pfeffer that it should be easier for people to put their story out there in the world and to work through and around difficult career problems, anything from bias to negotiating, asking what you want, and we hope later talking to your manager or subordinate about things. And so now that's the framing. That's kind of where I'm coming from. And what I want to do is encourage you to tell your story more and to reach deep for the details in your stories. So I'm going to talk about the career story and career fitness. I'm going to actually give you a to-do list, and then we'll have questions. Okay, so what is this career story that I'm talking about? You guys are out there, you're interviewing, you're talking about yourself. I'm pretty sure that you have elevator pitches ready and you've gotten these great bios together, and you already know that it's not just your LinkedIn profile. You're not my younger users, but it's not just what you have on paper or your elevator pitch. It's every conversation you have with someone in this process, this Memorial Day weekend, when you have social processes. Of course, it's in the interviews, but it's also in how you write your emails to people, even your everyday emails, your social emails, letting people know what you're looking for on your next step and the help you need. And it's your conversations that you have that are casual and at work and before meetings. So your career story is this very malleable, fresh moment, and it's very important. So there's a lot of research that says people are hired or given opportunities on potential and experience, okay? So when people get hired or opportunities based on their potential, they tend to be low bias people, really low. They're not people of color, they are not women, they're not introverts. I've now described about 80% of the population. And so if you're an extrovert, even then you could have bias against you. You might have bias for whatever happened in your last job, or you don't have quite the right look someone's looking for. Potential is risky, but experience, telling about your experience and your story and crafting it, puts you in control. It sort of works down the bias. And we know that there's some research behind a black curtain. I don't know if any of your speakers have talked about this, but if a man and a woman try out for an orchestra, for example, and the judges, the hirers know the gender, there's a bias against the women. But if we put them behind a black curtain, there's no bias. More women end up getting hired. But in life, there's no black curtain. The only black curtain is how you tell your story. And this is this notion that I call career fitness. Career fitness is knowing your career record. So these are all these nice details. We'll get to those. And then crafting and telling your story. So many times we hear about the pitch, but what we don't hear about is the 50 pitches. Or we talk about interview prep, but we don't talk about going back and digging through our stories and crafting many stories so we're ready. Not only does it give us a freshness to our conversations, but it gives us a confidence. So that's one of the best things that I like about the career record itself. If you've kept one, it's like favorites for an athlete. When you go back to your career stories of your successes, you're reflecting on your great performance, and that boosts you. It's like an athlete, like a basketball player, thinking about their swoosh. So what we're looking for is for you, when your career fit, when you know your career record, when you've got these stories, we're looking for you to swoosh, to feel like when you go into your interviews, when you talk to people on the phone, you remember you are top of your game, that you know your work, you know it really well. And there's a warning about the career record. So many people say, if you look on Google, like right now, if you stop listening to me a little bit, you look on Google, look up the words, keep your career record, log what you do, you'll find millions of hits, you know, a couple hundred good ones from coaches saying, write down everything you do, your accomplishments and the shout outs. And the big warning with that is when I used to encourage people to do this in talks, I would find that they were writing down their big KPIs, their milestones or awards. But a career record is these things we forget. And you might be sitting there thinking, well, Giselle, I've already forgotten them. But if you dig deep, you can start remembering them. And you can also start doing them in your next job to make you more powerful. And the idea is that, you know, we can all remember what we did in the last 3 months, or most of us can. I can't always, if we record one thing a week. But by the time we get to 3 years, that could be 150 things that we've done. And by the time we get to 10 years, it's over 500. And when you think back on your careers and your career stories, how can you get these details back to tell your story? How can you make them fresh in your mind? How can you organize them and practice them? That's what we encourage people to do in the app, but it's something you can do now. It's not as if you have to have been doing this every step of the way to be more successful with telling your story. In addition, there are 2 areas that get left out of the career record that we focus on. And these are both easy for you to do now. Market information. So what we know is that when you get a job offer, in order to get the best pay for that job, you have to be in the know about the compensation. And one of the mistakes people tend to make is they don't ask a wide enough range of people for the compensation information. And this is a real problem. So if you don't have a shallow network, a lot of people to ask, then you might think that the range is lower. You might, you can look, of course, on pay scale and all these places, but we know that around 80% of hiring managers say that they don't make the first offer to the top of the budget. So it's your job over the course of this time while you're looking for jobs and you're talking to people to talk about money, which can be very hard for people to get to ask about compensation, benefits. What are people exactly doing? But the more you can do this, the better position you'll be in, not only to tell your story, but to negotiate. And it's important as you rise through the ranks, particularly, it looks like the group was about half women, I couldn't tell. But as you rise through the ranks, the percentage of salary difference for bias increases. So although the average is roughly about 17%, in some senior positions, women earn half as much as men in the same position, for example, in the same law firm. And so it's extraordinarily important, the more senior you are, to know the market information. And I have a story that I'm allowed to repeat without naming the large accounting firm name, but there was a partner not that long ago who ran the West Coast region of this very large firm and was given a new opportunity and took it. And she went home, she realized she hadn't asked what the compensation was. She went back the next day and she learned from the person that not only did she not know what the compensation was, but she was the first person in the hiring person's experience in the last 15 years who didn't know what the prior person and the prior before had been paid. And so it didn't put her in a very good negotiating position. And really all she had to do, we were at dinner together, she said, is I just could have asked. I knew I wanted that job, but I felt uncomfortable doing it. So if there's one thing that you might do differently over this period of time when you're looking, it would be to talk to people about the compensation they earn. The other piece of the career record that goes unnoticed by a lot of people is this idea of satisfaction or flow. It's not something I've made up. Maybe you've read about it if you've read the Design Your Life Thinking or Design Your Career Thinking, but this is the notion of when time stands still, when you love the work you're doing. And when you have flow, you're actually more productive. They say that people who have flow save a chunk of their day because they're so passionate about all the work they do, but they don't need to have flow all day. You don't need to be in the zone with the work you do all day. The target is 10%. And people with 10% flow in their day are happier. And this is essential right now as you're looking. This is a whole topic. And in the app, we have a satisfaction tracker, which is a little bit of an experiment because nobody's been doing this, where it randomly asks you with a push notification how you're doing and you track it. But the idea is that as you reflect back on your work, if you can find these moments of satisfaction, figure out what they are, and weave those into your story so that the jobs that you're getting will actually be more positive for you. It's one thing, I don't know how you have felt during COVID, but during this time, it has become eminently clear to me that being satisfied with what you do, enjoying it, makes life much better. And you might be wondering and saying, well, Giselle, you're building this app yourself. What do you know about this? So I went through this process of manual satisfaction tracking myself while I was a general counsel, and I shifted my job, not a lot, maybe by 20%. I delegated differently. I got rid of some work and gave it to someone else, and I was able to put more time into what I liked, and I was so much happier. In my last 7 years of Coppola, we're in that happy place. And during that time, I worked with about 50 younger people, just 1 year out of school to about 10 years out of school, working with them to track their satisfaction at work and then just slightly pivot what they were doing. This made a huge influence on their lives and their career paths. And you're at this point now where thinking about those moments and trying to weave those into your story will help you get to a better place because you'll be more passionate about what you're talking about. So the career record that we encourage people to track in the app, but you could do it anywhere. You can do it in Google Notes. You can do it on a spreadsheet. You can do it on Post-it notes. Your accomplishments, your shout outs, the market info, and satisfaction. But so what? So you have this information. You have to craft and tell your story. And this is an area where we don't have time today to workshop telling your story or writing your story. I see from the materials that from Christy that this is a key part of the boot camp. But even when you're not in search, we encourage you to do this at least weekly. And when you're in search, daily. This idea of talking yourself up more, building your shallow network and asking for what you need, but intentionally breaking this down, saying, I met with Joe, or I'm meeting with Joe. What am I going to ask Joe for? It's not that he has to even give you an introduction. It might be information about a company, but to make sure that every interaction you have, you're asking for something that you need that helps you in your career path. And it can be hard to do this. There are a lot of objections, which is why I was incentivized to build an app to not do this, especially networking. And the biggest objection that I get is I've already asked and they said no, or I already reached out. Maybe it felt like they ghosted me. There's some interesting research that says that if someone has told you no once or even twice, they are more likely to say yes the next time. And the research is pretty clear that people want to say yes and they want to help you. So even though, you're not right out of college, this research holds true wherever we are in our lives. It even holds true for a stranger on the street. So you don't need to know someone to try out career fitness and this networking. There are people who try things like, 100 new people in 100 days, where they're telling their story over and over. Similar to how I've had to pitch CheaSeed as a product. And by doing it over and over, you're hearing and learning what people are excited about you. And every time you have the opportunity to ask for help, and it can feel pretty lonely. I mean, I think this boot camp that you're attending and showing up on Friday morning before a holiday weekend is a real testament to how hard it is to keep putting yourself out there. But if you make a plan to do it on a regular basis, and this is what the app does. The app has you set targets. It nudges you. It has you look at a dashboard, but you don't need to use an app to do this. You have to adapt this advancement mindset. You've already shown up today, okay? You're all here, you've shown up today. And I don't know how much, I don't have a survey on here, how much you already feel you're networking on a regular basis, literally every day, you're crafting these different stories. It can feel uncomfortable. And one of the things we have in the learning in the app is this notion of low stakes practice. It's one of the best places to start is your social network, talking to people you do know. And I find with CheaSeed, it's not something I've done in a search, that writing to strangers on LinkedIn, although my hit rate is not that high, is actually very empowering, because when I reach someone, it gives me this opportunity to practice where I don't have a prior relationship with them. And even if there's no next step after the conversation, I've learned about myself and I've practiced telling my story, which is what I want you to do. So that's this idea of telling your story more, finding your story through your career record and telling it, and then building a to-do list. Let's see, oops. So we talked about the career record, and what do? You're looking now for something, you're in transition. It's not as if on a weekly basis, you're going to add in what you're doing. But take just a few minutes. Don't sit down for hours. Take just a few minutes per day to add to your list some facts and stories. And do this in a no low pressure situation, whatever that is for you. Sitting outside in your garden after you've gone for a walk with a glass of wine, relax and try to remember the details of your past jobs, things that you were particularly proud of, things that give you career energy. And then just once a week, take 30 minutes and organize them into themes. And having these themes ready with the facts, this makes it much easier to respond in interviews where you review them, but it also makes you fresher for networking. And that is the entire idea of career fitness. The idea is that you collect your career record, you talk yourself up, and that could be your pitch in these sort of social interactions, which we have less now in COVID, but you're going to have more and more of, is you're just out and about seeing people, talking yourself up, making sure you do that every day. Then intentional networking, where you ask for something. And that's the big piece that often gets left on the table. This is like that Google person. He didn't ask people for a job, but he said things like, I want the next role. And to me, that's an ask. That's putting yourself out there to say what your aspirations are and leaving that thought in someone else's mind about what you want to do next. And so if in every conversation you have with people, if you could add in this, what I want to do next, so they think of you, because it doesn't have to be someone in your industry or field to help you. It was just like the introduction at the beginning today. Perhaps you know someone, this is your friend, in an HR role or in a leadership role in a company that has people in IT or accounting or another area. And that's what we're looking for you to put yourself out there to do it. And while you're looking for a job, it's one time a day. If you're kind of in a place where you're thinking about the future, it's something you want to do a few times a week. And if it's just in that everyday place, even just once a week, writing down what you do, telling someone what you do and where you want to go. And that could include your ask. And doing some networking. It doesn't have to be that you go to a networking conference, meeting someone for coffee.
Yeah, I don't know.
An online coffee, whatever it takes.
I'll have more.
That's the goal. And you can do this in the app where we have a usability product out there in the App Store. It works. We're going to launch at the end of summer. The idea of the app is that you keep your career record, and then it nudges you to do these actions, right? Talk yourself up, network, ask. It helps you frame things into stories with collections, with your record. And then in the fall, you would be able to take your record and share it with someone. They could help you work on your resume. They could help you with your interview prep. That's what the app does. So the app is probably more forward looking. It's something you could use to track your thoughts about the past, and it would be easy. But the idea of the app, this, track the details, keep them fresh so that you can tell the story. They're very simple ideas. And if you can tell your story even one more time a week, but consider doing it, how much more can you tell your story? That's really my goal for today, for you to think about when you leave today, how many times could I do this? Can I make a commitment to myself? Can I put it in my calendar? Can I have a weekly reminder? I don't need the app to do this. I can just make this happen. That's what I'm hoping that you get out of this morning's discussion. And I'm here for questions or to talk about anything else. So.
This is great, Giselle. And a couple things. I love how you talked about the Black curtain, and it's gender, but it's also age. We have so many people who experience, ageism.
Absolutely. No, ageism is huge, and there's very little research. You're right. And so these really issues, yeah. So this issue of experience versus potential is one that is really solid in the organizational behavior research, but it's not one that kind of links the story, the pitch, the bio with getting a job and things like ageism and racism and gender bias. It's not there. And so that's why these details, having them accessible is so powerful. And it does require reviewing them and going through them. There's no doubt that there's work involved, but it can help.
The other thing, and I know I experienced this before, when I was leaving Disney, it was like the stories helped me recognize the value that I bring. When I was, it wasn't necessarily something that I thought about, but I really do think that writing down these stories is kind of like reinforcement that you have significant value.
It is. That's the athlete analogy. So the athletes, if you've done any athletic performance work, the coaches will have you focus on your winning moment, the swoosh, the subpar golfing, the running the mile in less time, whatever it is, whatever your passion is, that the coach will focus you on that. But in career, we need to do that more because everybody brings something important to the table, especially at this stage of career. But it can be hard to remember that when you're looking. And I know with CheaSeed, I've pitched this product so many times, and you can forget what your secret sauce is. And something someone told me that was so important was, hey, Giselle, remember, you're bringing them something of value. But after you go to interview, network to network, it can feel like you're hat in hand.
That's interesting. There's a couple of, somebody put a question in. Oh, where did it go? Well, now I can't see it. Okay, if you have a question for Giselle, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask it. The other thing, I really, there's a couple of things. I love the swoosh and then the nudges. And so it's just like nudging forward. It's like one step forward gets us, you know, to that next level, whatever it is. And, you know, and for us in sales, it's like, you know, one step forward, you know, helps us. And in job search, it's one step forward gets you that much closer to your next opportunity.
That's right. I mean, job search is sales. There's no doubt. And the other thing is breaking it down for yourself into small steps. So there's some good research in the diet space that says, if we ask people to write down what they eat 7 days a week, their failure rate is very high. And they basically don't do it. But if we ask people to write down 1 day a week of what they eat, not only is there a really high success rate, so they feel good about it, about 40% of the people write down what they eat 3 or 4 times a week. So by setting this low bar, if you've read anything about tiny habits, and just hit that bar, don't move the bar up. Whatever you do, don't move the bar up. Set your target and celebrate that. And if you do better, great, but don't move the bar up. That's the #1 advice from Tiny Habits.
That's interesting. We have a Tiny Habits coach on here. Oh, Anna Lau.
Great.
So Anna, what do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. I love all this. So not only am I a Tiny Habits coach, I'm currently in the Design Your Life course.
Great.
And so I'm using Tiny Habits as small steps. And I would be happy to be a Tiny Habits coach to any folks here who want to develop a habit of you know, their job search. It's not fun, right? But if you can make it a habit and just do it, you have to do it. It's just so much easier. And Giselle, I love your app. I would love to know when it's out for Android folks like myself. Because
so it will be in July. We actually already have it in beta in Android, but we're not going to release it until July 1st, but we will, and I'll make sure through Christy, we let you know.
Thank you so much. Great stuff.
What are your questions? Julia, I think you have a question.
I do, Giselle. So within, I believe, the past year and a half, California has made it illegal for anyone to ask, what is your salary? So if someone says, what range are you looking for? I turn it back around and say, well, what range are you thinking of? Do you feel like that range that they say is different for a female or male? Or do you feel like this has kind of changed things now that they're not really allowed to ask what your current salary is? Just more around that, because I had no idea that the more executive you become, the more there's a bigger disparity.
Right. So those are great questions. So we have some content in the app, which is about this, and I'm very familiar with this. And as a lawyer, I love this. So the response to give, the safe response to give is to say, I want to be paid at the high end of market. And so sometimes they don't give you the whole range. This is a problem. Other mistakes are that the job title might not align with the work you'll be doing. This is a big problem with, I mean, I love products out there like PayScale, and there are all sorts of ways you can research pay now. You have to be really careful. It's always about the details, right? Peel back the onion and say, hey, is there a job a level up that has some of the duties that I'm going to be doing? And even when you say, I want the range, I've learned this through the young people that I've coached, is that they get there and there are people who earn more. So whether or not it's the range, worst case, you don't have the market info, ask for 20% more than the highest number. Once you've got the job offer, wait till you have the offer. So you don't put a number in. That's always the best negotiating technique. Don't lock yourself in. Then, in the discussion, say, I want the high market. This is why my 3 skills meet this. And we have a script for this in the app. And then you, once you get the offer, always ask for more. I mean, not asking for more. 80% of people have more money in the budget. The question is how much more? And that's going to vary by industry, role, level. But don't assume that you are close to the top of the range. I mean, the worst feeling, and it's always young women, they go into a tech company. They think they're getting top of range because that's what the hiring manager said. And they get there, and because of the app, they start asking people in casual conversation, right? Money is like sex. It's the taboo topic. We don't talk about it. So they're gathering the information and they're learning that Joe does the same job and he works less and he's earning more. Or Jane started later and she got twice as much stock. So, you know, human resources is an art, not a science, just like medicine. And they try, they want to be transparent. The law is to be transparent, but don't count on that. Don't count on the law giving you everything you need. And then remember that compensation is more than pay. So you're all more senior. So bonuses, not just starting bonuses, but 6 months. One of the questions I got this from an iRelaunch conference that I attended. And I don't know if any of you have done that or had gaps, but this professional interview advisor said, ask in your interview and ask your boss, if in 6 months I've been successful, what will I have done? If you feel, and the feel word's important, if you feel I've been successful, what will I have done? Now, what that does is it gives you a roadmap to a bonus and an increase. That's why I like it, because you've been successful. And so think about that when you're framing this as well.
So there's another question. How do you address the impact of mergers and acquisitions, consolidations, bankruptcies, et cetera, have played in the jobs that you've had not lasting very long? And it can make your resume look choppy, but it is no fault that you caused. Are there ways to reposition yourself? So
I would like to hire someone to coach me on this question. I have thoughts about it, but they're just my thoughts. I like to give you things that are based on research. But, there are a lot of people in that position. And I spent an inordinate amount of time, almost an embarrassing amount of time, at looking at young people's LinkedIns and resumes to kind of get in their heads for what they're doing. And let me tell you, they have a lot of jobs and they are professionals at adding in certificates from Coursera or something to make them look better. And they do this trick. I don't know if you consider it a trick, but it's kind of upgaming, where they do a certificate program from a better school than they went to. I can't tell you how many people have been to Harvard. I mean, it's amazing. And that's at the top of their education. So there's a lot about placement. And then don't forget about this, like in LinkedIn and your resume, the about section. I'm not an expert in telling your story, but what I can tell you is when you put at the top, innovator, problem solver, and things like this, that's where you're focusing the discussion. Remember, this is your story. So those are details. And then your job is to say, what did you get from those? Not to focus on the negative. There's some good research that I'm familiar with in the venture capital investment space, and it's relevant. And I think this is an ageism thing. And I'm so happy you pointed that out, Christy. It's the same. In VC, women are asked more negative questions than men. And I'm guessing that in your search, as people age, that they are also asked more negative questions. And so if that comes, the story that you pre-prepare is the one that flips it into an opportunity. Great question. I have these set of skills that I've gained, and that's a great opportunity to put them at Exco, at your company. So that reframing of the problem into a solution is important, and you can actually use the word opportunity. Like, it's okay to be not subtle when you put it out there, because you want them to see you as someone who is going to come in and make an opportunity.
That's really a good point. There's a couple things. How are we doing with questions? Who else has a question? So the designing your life, what is that?
Anna, do you want to talk about your experience, or do you want me to go ahead?
Please go ahead, and if you want me to chime in with my experience, I'm happy to do so.
Okay, so
thank you.
There are I've seen two approaches to this. There's a book, and I can't remember the author's name, and it's Design Your Life Thinking, and now I believe they have a book called Design Your Career Thinking. There you go. Got it. Perfect. This is great. And the idea is this, if you've heard of IDEO or the design school at Stanford, it's really a brainstorming methodology. It's not so dissimilar from this step-by-step approach. As a lawyer, we say deconstruct. So you deconstruct the problem. And so they've basically deconstructed brainstorming into a methodology, and they've applied this to your life and career. And what we built into CheaSeed was this idea, Anna, and this idea that they have in all the Design Your Life Thinking is this idea of what do you like and not like, and adding more of what you like, shifting and pivoting your work to that, and trying to shed the things you don't. And the only way to do it is to write it down on a regular basis. And so in the app, it's random. You set your frequency and the time slots that you're open to getting text in, and then you just fill it in and you have a dashboard. So it's a way to start thinking about your work differently. And I think people have pretty good results, especially in pivots with the Design Your Life Thinking and career. And it can be something like, I know they don't recommend this, but like Johnson O'Connor, if any of you has used them before, they do this aptitude work, and they might get someone later in their career who has an aptitude for music and hasn't worked in music at all. And then that becomes part of their life passion, their hobby. They recommend it. So it's not always that you can just change your work. You know, it was like, I remember I was working as a lawyer when I did the Johnson O'Connor at a law firm. I was doing tax and corporate law. And they said, you really should go back to consulting. Giselle said, I like being a tax lawyer. That's when I decided to become a general counsel, because I felt like it was a consulting job. So it's trying to me, this is about a step-by-step brainstorming process that you can go through with a program or with the book, depending on how much time you want to invest and how much support you need. And you can shift your thinking to pursue something you're more passionate about.
And then you can get to your swoosh.
You can get to your swoosh, but you've had your swooshes. So the important thing, Christy, is that everybody has had their swooshes.
Yeah.
So, and you can get more of them when you get to that pivoted job, but that swoosh is there to give you your confidence. You know, there's a lot of argument about whether the Wonder Woman pose or the spreaded legs actually gives you power in a meeting, but whatever gives you your power and confidence, there's no wrong in that.
This is great. Giselle, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on board. And I like the whole connection to the Design Your Life. And that's certainly a book that I'm going to get to see, you know, what the correlations are to what we're even doing in boot camp too. And then also, it's interesting that you brought up the Johnson O'Connor, because I had taken my son through that when he was in high school. And
wow.
It's a fascinating thing. And they've been around for gosh, close to 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
They collected all this data from professionals, and they tell you, and it's very there's an algorithm, and they tell you what your aptitudes are based on all these things. It's fascinating. So if anybody wants,
and it's never too late. It's really, you can be 80 years old. I've heard stories from 80-year-olds who've done this, 60, 50, 40, 30. I am a big advocate, and it's less than $1,000. And for me, it was revolutionary.
Yeah, I think it's phenomenal. And I know what my son got out of it, and it's fascinating data. It really is. So anyway, thank you so much. We want to have you back, and I can't wait to see the success of CheaSeed, and you're learning so much. You brought so much value to our group. I really appreciate it. How about we give claps for Giselle. Thank you everyone so much. And we're looking forward to seeing you next week. We have Scott Woodard, who is going to talk about sharing your strategic value. So more fun on the horizon. And Anna, we've got to slot you in as a bootcamp speaker to talk about tiny habits. So we'll get you on the calendar too. Giselle, thank you. We wish you so much.
It's my pleasure. Christy, thank you. It's so helpful.
You are bold. Hats off to you. Thank you.
I got my Wonder Woman pose. Okay.
All right. Okay. Sierra, hit the music. Bye, everyone. We'll see you next week.
That was awesome.
Yeah.